That's okay. Go.
Just
Go.
play your piano
Yeah, I'm gonna be playing
till we get
piano.
back.
Yeah.
I'm here, but I'm not here, if you know what I'm saying.
He's here.
I'm not
Um
here, if you know what I'm saying.
yeah. Yeah. All right, let me copy this. Just do a little. I'm gonna do the pop out chat again because I can't seem to get the other thing to work, which is fine. It's fine, everyone.
I love you.
Did you hear Real said he loves us? How great is that? We love you too, Real. All right, let me go ahead and get the video link here.
How many do we have tonight?
Is a good question.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9.
9. That's a pretty decent number. All right, I think we're good. What's up?
What's up? What's up?
I guess I'll play a little bit of Rhodes for a minute while everybody gets in here. I just want to show off the Ableton ePiano Rhodish because it sounds so peaceful. Tranquil.
According to Real, it's indistinguishable from a Real Rhodes.
Tranquil, even. Well, Real's hearing is messed up, so.
That's cold. All right, let me see the questions associated with this track.
Almost knocked my piano off my shitty piano. Let's be real. I mean, if I did knock it onto the ground, I probably wouldn't be that worried. But I love both. You know.
Is Real back yet? Yeah.
He is back. All right. Let me go ahead and get up the questions as well. How's it going, everyone? Hopefully you had a nice week, a fancy week, a spicy week even.
A flavored week?
Yeah, flavored week. All right. Starting off, we have the... I still don't know how to pronounce this name, but I'm going to go ahead and guess. And I'm going to say...
I think it's Euclid.
Euclid? Is it Euclid? Okay, that's what I was thinking. But, you know, it's one of those things where sometimes English letters just don't... Euclid. Okay, perfect. So he's right. We were right. The way the mind naturally went was definitely correct, which is nice. Well, I look forward to this R&B and soul. I look forward to it. As we all know, Euclid's got very spicy arrangement skills. Very extra spicy. He may as well be the ghost pepper of arrangement, if you ask me. So let me just make sure we got... That's fine. We'll pretend it is. Even if it doesn't even sound close to R&B or soul. You know, we're redefining genres here, all right? It's like when you hear rhythm.
He's the pepper. He's the Pepper X of R&B.
Yeah, it's when you hear rhythm and you call it country, you know, like the people who call rhythm country. It's like that. Anyway, let us embark upon this journey. Just realized I have my SoundCloud muted, so that's a little bit of an oopsie. A little bit of an oopsie there. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if there was not enough bass. I think there might have been too much bass in that.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, you go first. You go first,
oh,
Dino. You sound like you know
felt
what you
kind
want
of
to say.
felt kind of bass heavy. Um, Let me read the questions again. Uh, I know the drums aren't that good. The drums felt okay. Something you can do to improve them is there's a Cohen sound video on drum production. I can message it to you. It's a private video, but
Exactly what I was
I'd
gonna
be
say.
I'd be glad to send it. Um, and then there's a as far as the guitar sounding too compressed, I wouldn't say that. Um, it felt pretty good. But the drums, like just look at like realistic drum arrangement patterns, and that's probably your best bet there. But nice track, dude. Definitely R&B and soul. Lots of soul. So much soul. But yeah,
Yeah, no, that was
good shit.
soulful. Yeah, I don't know if you mind me hopping in, but I have thoughts. I basically agree completely with what Dino is saying. I think the biggest thing that I'm thinking that I can like contribute is on the drums. Like the drums definitely feel kind of too on the grid. You know what I'm saying? They're too sterile. They're not quite enough like life in them. I would say there's two things you could do here. The first thing is what Dino suggested, kind of reference some other drums inside of songs that you really like listening to and sort of basically make them feel or sound like that. Or what you can do is try practicing playing in your drums with, either your computer keyboard if you don't have a keyboard, or like a keyboard, or even like a pad. Like if you have drum pads, I would start trying to practice with that and a metronome. Just given your style of music, I think that would actually really benefit your style. So yeah, that's what I would recommend doing. But yeah, the drums definitely, in my opinion, were the biggest thing that stood out in like a negative way. And they're not bad like drum sounds. Like I think you picked some pretty good drum sounds, like the samples themselves. It's just the arrangement of it feels very kind of quantized and sterile, and maybe even a little bit unnatural. That's probably the best way I can use to describe it. So yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing I would focus on. I think that the guitar sounded dynamic enough. I don't think there was any issue with it. And yeah, I think the bass could be a little bit less aggressive, but if you like it at that loudness, you could also just try either turning everything else up, or what I would recommend is like just using more clipping during your mixing stage. So like you could start clipping your guitar and all your other stuff a little bit more, and that'll make it feel a little bit louder, even though it doesn't actually necessarily mean that it is louder. And yeah, I think this is a really cool track. I agree with Dino. Soul, 100%. Soul. Yeah, Real, what do you think?
Yeah, I like this as well. Your stuff's always nice, experimental. Um, as far as the drums go, definitely watch the current sound tutorial. There's just a bunch of good stuff in there. One thing I noticed about the drums is there wasn't like a driving hat pattern, which can be cool. I do that a lot, honestly. I kind of get bored of like a single hat pattern driving the whole thing. But I mean, it can be good. It can be good to start with because if you're gonna do like random and sporadic hats, you got to be like very, very tasteful with it. Um, and I don't know, just some of like the really quick hat runs could maybe like play with the velocities on them. But yeah, honestly, when I make drum grooves these days, I just like I start with a very simple hat pattern that kind of just like reinforces the kick and the snare, and then I'll kind of get more experimental as I start sound designing. I might go back and change the hats a little bit later. It's just hard to get like a really good groove going when you keep pulling the hats away. Um, Sub was like a little, it was either too high up in parts, like you're hitting a really high register with it, or the low mids were really loud. I wasn't paying super close attention to the spectrum, but there's like some harsher frequencies in like the low mids that kind of happens when you pump the sub too hard or if you go too high with it. Um, and then also there might have been times where it dipped out of key. I couldn't really tell. Just go through, make sure everything's in key. It's never gonna hurt. If you're hitting like chords, thanks guys, drums for sure. Yeah, it's can't go wrong studying drums. I go back and learn new stuff about drums all the time. I didn't think the guitar was too compressed. No, I mean I will just like absolutely squash things though, but it's electronic music. You can kind of get away with that. It can be nice to like have dynamic moments too, or even like entire dynamic songs. But I mean, nobody's gonna be mad that you overcompressed in today's era, so long as you're not like aliasing super hard. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'd go through, make sure everything's in key, and then kind of like reinforce the groove with the hat patterns. And I think you could take this to another level because it's already good, but it could be really good. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome work. I still think that your arrangements are extremely complex and unique. So keep that alive. Just kind of refine. I feel like that's all this needs. Like I think the idea is there. So hell yeah. All right. On to the next banger. We got Switch. He's about to turn us on. Careful, lads. I saw it wasn't that over 3 minutes, so I just let it play out. I mean, I can jump in first if that's okay. I have some thoughts. First of all, I think that the sound choice and the arrangement for the most part is pretty fire. I think the biggest thing about this song that immediately stuck out, as far as your first question, is there definitely is a lot of repetition that I think is not entirely necessary, but it doesn't mean that it can't be fixed. Because I think that you have the ability to change it up, and you know what you're doing when you do change it up. But I think it just needs to happen like more frequently. That's pretty much the biggest thing that I would say would benefit this track a lot. I do think that as far as ideas for that, so let's see here. So you have like sections like this, and there's I feel like in dubstep the best thing you can do is like call response. So what I would recommend you do is have like maybe call with like you could be like whoop, whoop. Like you could be like whoop whoop whoop, wow 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 wow. You know, like you could go between these two sounds, and I think it would make it a lot more interesting for the listener instead of having just one of those sounds throughout the whole entire section. I think the UKG as the second drop didn't really hit the way that I think you wanted it to hit for me. I wasn't really feeling it, but I don't know. Maybe it's okay. I think it just needs a little bit of a different drum sound selection. I think if you had different sounds for the drums, it could be better. Because I think having like the dubby kick in the UKG part just doesn't feel like something I was able to latch on to. But I think if you use like drum and bass style drums with like a little bit more organic feeling kicks and stuff, that could work out really nicely. I think that, what is it missing? I think the biggest thing that it was missing was some more vocal processing. I'm a little bit in the opinion that if you're going to have like a call response vocal, you can't use the exact same sounding one every single time. I think if you, I don't know, even pitch it up or down, or, you know, add a bit crush to it or whatever, right? Like you could do there's a whole lot of stuff you could do to vocals to make them sound different each time. But I think that would really benefit this song a lot, because every time I hear the switch, it doesn't really hit it. Like every time I hear it, it gets gets weaker and weaker every time that I hear it. So that's a way to like keep it nice and fresh and like impactful for the listener. Let's see. How do we feel about the intro and build? I felt like it was a little bit off-putting, and the biggest reason why is because you have this bass. I would tease that. I would, cut out all the low end and maybe some of the highs, put a bunch of reverb on it, and kind of maybe slowly bring the reverb away as you get closer and closer to the drop. And then, as you get to this drop, like remove all of the EQing and remove all the reverb and have it be nice and dry. I think that would be a really nice way to like tease that, to let the listener know what's about to happen to them. I also think there's a lot of low end in this intro. I think you could cut away a little bit more frequencies just to make the listener just feel like, whoa, when you hit that drop section. And then any creative suggestions. I think the biggest thing, and this is like my opinion, right? I don't think you need to do this, but I think it would really benefit this song, is to make this little breakdown section in the middle way shorter. I think you could get away with like maybe just having the second half or even like a quarter of this, especially when you're planning on switching up the BPM kind of the way you were doing it. I would say you don't need this long of a breakdown. And if you do want to keep the length the way it is, I would say add more instruments, or at the very least, kind of change the instruments more often, just to keep the listener engaged during that section. But yeah, no, I think the percussion was good, by the way. I think the biggest thing about the percussion that I didn't like was the kicks and snares during the second part. Like, I think if the kicks and snares were different here, it would go a little bit harder. Maybe a little bit more like natural sounding hi-hats as well, but just like the drums in this section really didn't feel proper to like the style that you were going for. But anyway, those are my thoughts. I appreciate you guys letting me like let loose there. But no, I think this track is really cool though. The sound design on the basses is fire. So you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. But anyway, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll go.
I have. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just to double down on what Magdo said. The sound design on the bass is like, it is repetitive, but I almost didn't mind because the whole time I was like trying to figure out what's going on with that sound. Super good processing on it. There's not a lot of high end other than the hats, but I mean, maybe that's okay. Like, I was gonna say something about it, but then I realized like that's Deep Dub's entire thing. So yeah, the sound design was super nice. For the second drop, if you wanna switch the flow up like that, maybe introduce the drum pattern, like even just like the snare as you're building it up, so it's not like a complete surprise, but it's still a little bit of a surprise. For the intros and the builds, there wasn't a lot of tension being built. I really like the patch that you used, but maybe like you could have a filter opening on it, or like a reverb sweep coming in and rising, or just like some combination of basic risers, or atmospheric stuff, just like anything to kind of contrast that like main patch that you're using, and then also add tension. I wouldn't do a bunch of high-end stuff though, because if you do a bunch of high-end stuff when the drop hits, because it doesn't have a ton of high-end, it's not going to feel very impactful. That's something I do a lot. I like build a giant intro, and then the drop doesn't even live up to it. So just, I guess, be mindful of that. And yeah, what Magdu said about switching the drums in the second half, just play around with different kicks and snares, like put them back to back with the kick and snare from the first drop, and make sure they're similar enough to where the progression makes sense, but they're also different, because I do think that second half called for a different drum selection. I don't know. This sounded really good. Like that patch is super solid. If you do end up changing it from like the flow of the second drop, you could get away with just like processing the first patch harder. Like you could. It sounds like there might be some reverb on it, but you could like group a convolution reverb and have that running in parallel, just like EQ out the lows and some of the highs, just to make it like thicker and more full. I don't know, throw like a disperser on it, OTT, just anything to like beef it up for the second half. Wait, sorry, I need to see the questions. What's missing? It's like minimal, but I wouldn't say I was thinking that you need to add more stuff. It's like it's tastefully minimal. Again, because that patch is like it's carrying. Maybe like reverb sweeps. Those are always just like super easy and convenient. You could do them like mid drop to like fill space. And yeah, what Magdu said about the vocal processing, if you're gonna bring the same vocal in, pitch it up, pitch it down, put like grain delay on it, stack multiple of them, one like up 7 semitones, one down 5, or because it's not even tonal, you could just go up 1 semitone and down 1 semitone. I know like FN does that a lot, and then you can process them together, like group them and put like a OTT and a saturator on it, and it just makes the vocal huge. Or you could like pitch it down. Any creative suggestions? Percussion was good, and creative suggestions? No, I don't know. It's just this is good. It just needs like a little more polishing, fill in like some tiny gaps. But yeah, keep cooking on it. I enjoyed.
All right. Okay. Start from the top with all 6 of these questions. Is the flow too repetitive? If so, any ideas to switch it up? I don't think that the flow is too repetitive. I think that the sound gets to be too repetitive. Even though it is really well designed, if you can design a sound that sounds that good, you can design another sound that sounds just as good. Opinions on the UKG second drop. same thing. Change the main sound. That will make it more interesting. Or like Magdu had said, do like a call and response thing for the first section, and then you can have the repetitive UKG section kind of going. And if it were me, I would have the sound design changes in the first section, because that is a very UKG sounding like what bass. And then also like without having, it was already mentioned, without having some sort of like transition sound or transition effects, you maybe don't want to change up the drums that dramatically without letting the listener know that it's going to come. What is missing? Any other sounds your ears wanted? How do we feel about the intro build? Percussion feedback, overall creative suggestions. I think the other guys kind of hit those pretty well on the head. And then for the percussion stuff, I already messaged you the video that you asked for. So yeah, it's a good track. Like Real was saying, some gnarly sound design. But yeah, you can. Yeah, Poyo. if you can do one, you can do another. So yeah, just kind of go into it. You can also look into Magduit's fractal technique. That's something like where you do iterative changes, and even something like with with how consistent that LFO is, you could like chop it into audio and then do like minor changes on each segment as it hits. So it'll be like wub 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 wub, and then it'll be like a different wub, but like slightly different each time. And then you would have like, don't repeat that from section to section. You would have it just like completely change. Or if it were me, I would start with the furthest out from the original and then slowly progress back into the original UKG sound. And so that would be one way, because I feel like UKG is kind of like a more basic than dubstep, even though it's not. Like objectively speaking, but I think more people can like wrap their minds around UKG than they can dubstep. But anyway, yeah, that's a nice track. Can't wait to. Oh, right. Also, Switch is kind of like a super basic drop vocal. And I just want to echo what Magdu said about like, I think a down sample would go like super hard on that vocal, and I don't ever recommend downsampling on vocals. I think downsampling and bit crushing does not belong on vocals, but I think in this kind of track it could go super hard. So yeah.
Oh, and I just
Nice
want
track.
to add to that last part though. I feel like if you are willing to spend a little bit of money, BitSpeak is like one of the coolest vocal effects that exists, and it's like I think $33 or something. It's not like super cheap, but it's also like kind of affordable for what it is. And of course, I mean, yeah, there's always the extended free trial, but regardless, like it's worth investigating if you really like using a lot of like vocals in your tracks. I always recommend people just check that out. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dino. I don't know if you were done, but
No, I was done. I'm ready to go on to the next one, sir.
okay, cool. Yeah, thank you, Gran. That was sick. Definitely clean sound design, bro. You know the vibe. Which is
Right, and like I said, if you can do it with one, you can do it again. Like, not hard.
On G. All right, next up, we got Restless. It's a pretty vibey picture. Looking pretty restless.
I'm terrified to see you hiding in the darkness, colder when it's twilight, and I've been feeling restless. I'm terrified to see you hiding in the darkness, colder when it's twilight, and I've been feeling restless.
I hate to be that guy, but I got things to say about this.
Flex.
Okay. Before I even address the questions, there's like a tom or something that's going in like the mid range that's happening on some of the downbeats with the call that it just absolutely needs to go. It's not in key with the rest of the track. I don't know if it's a tom or if it's a synth or whatever it is, but it's occupying that mid range and it's not in key with the rest of the track. It needs to go. It needs to not be in there whatsoever. I'm sure Magdo can find it if he looks for it. Yep. That just needs to not exist at all. All right.
There was this other sound too. Hang on. No, maybe that was it. Maybe that was it. My bad.
And then another thing, it feels like the bass levels pre-drop, like from the intro, are, even though they're not, but they feel louder because the frequency spectrum's not as occupied, and you just need to not have bass in the intro or the build. That's kind of an easy fix. Just put a little bit of a high pass on there, and it doesn't even have to be that much. But yeah, that needs to not be that way. So those are my two main gripes. Do the drops need more variation of sounds? No, not really. I think that like it's good. I like the melodic movement. And you know, it's the melodic variation is what's giving this like the movement and the feeling of freshness, and that's good. Two, thoughts on panning the vocals, chops in the background of the drops. Feels like it could distract a bit from the main lead. The only thing that was kind of distracting for me is it felt like in the very beginning of the first drop, it felt like it was distorting for some reason. Like the vocals were distorting, and then like especially when you have like such a huge hypersaw kind of sound, you really want to preserve that cleanliness and that pristine nature of a track like this. And then feedback on the overall mix. Be careful with that second harmonic, especially in the builds. Like if you listen to the second build into the second drop, it kind of gets a little spicy with like full frequency. And even though it's not like full bass, you still always want to make sure that you have your fundamental, skip a harmonic, and then open up with the third and fourth harmonics. But yeah, I like this track. I also was not expecting it to go this way. So yeah, that's those are my gripes. But yeah, that mid sound, you either need to figure it out, but more realistically, it just needs to not be there. I don't think it's adding anything to the track, and like it's occupying a big amount of frequency space while also being out of key. So yeah. Anywho, go ahead, boys.
Real, do you want to flex?
Yeah.
I'm still thinking.
Yeah, I like this one from the very beginning. The progression's really good. You started out with that like nice warm Reese and the super bright vocals on top. I thought the first build-up was phenomenal. Like literally not a single complaint. It sounded professional. Just the way you like the way you added things in and then took them out. It was just perfect. I don't think that you need to switch the sound. I do think you need to play with the post-processing on the sound though. I've been like referencing tracks lately, which is something I think I've talked shit on before, but I have seen the light. And most of the songs that I really like do not have a bunch of sounds. There's like one main sound that I really like, and then there's like there might be some sounds that come in and out of the high end, but like really it's one main bass is like the focus. Yeah, I just think the high end on this bass didn't really like live up to what I wanted it to. You could obviously like OTT, more saturation. Something I've been doing for like this blows it out, but it's a nice layer of kind of white noise. If you're in Ableton and you have the stock saturator, you put it on wave shaper mode and you crank the drive and the curve, and then you turn it down to like 2%. And it creates like noise out of the bass that you feed into it. So it's kind of still like matches the texture of the bass. You might need to put like an envelope follower on it though, because using the LFO bass. But yeah, I would just play with the post processing, get like more high end, more stereo width coming from it. But yeah, chord progression super nice. Patch is super nice. Just needs more high end in my opinion. Especially if it's going to be the main focus and you're not like filling the high end up with a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, that tom thing, I didn't really notice it until Dana said it, but yeah, I think it's because it's hitting at the same time as the kick, and then it's like they're both distorting together, which just makes it even louder. But yeah, anytime your kick is hitting, you don't really want any other drum sample on top of it, because you want your kick to bleed really well into your sub, and if there's like a tom or something else in the mid range, it's going to come off super resonant when you turn it up really loud in the car or on big systems especially. More various thoughts on panning the vocal chops. No, panning is good. Go crazy with panning. Yeah, the more I listen to music, one of my favorite songs, I just noticed the other day, the vocals are literally panned far right for the whole song. So, and I never noticed. It just sounded huge. Yeah, you can get away with some pretty crazy panning in the high end. But struck from the lead, no, if anything, I think it probably, the average listener doesn't pay super close attention to stereo spreads, so it's probably more than anything just making room for the lead, which is good, because that's like you can spread stuff out in terms of like where they occur on the frequency spectrum, like low to high, but you can also spread stuff out in the stereo. So you can have like stuff that's more mono and stuff that's like pretty much hitting the same notes, but it's wider, and they're going to mesh really well together because you have them in essentially different fields. Feedback on the overall mix. Again, just the post-processing on the main bass. But I really like that the intro. I thought the song was professional. But yeah, just kind of play with it, see what you can do with the main bass, and this is good. This is super good.
Heck yeah. All right. I've thought about what I wanted to talk about first. So I think that this is the biggest issue with the track, and we're pulling up paint, so we all know what this means. So it is definitely to deal with the drops. So the biggest thing that I'm noticing is with your track, you have this kind of a shape, and I feel like you could benefit from this kind of a shape. Well, okay, imagine, I didn't mean to, let me just
do it in a different color, brother.
Yeah, it's big brain. All right, so like same vibe, right? Like this is fine. But I think when you get to this point, you should be a little bit more spicy with these high ends. And you could also be a little bit spicier with like the fundamental sub area, I think. But especially this region here, which is like, if I'm gonna, whoops, let me just draw one more line here. This is like 1K ish, something. 1K.
Surprised you don't have this photo saved.
Honestly though, I might have to make a t-shirt. Maybe that'll be my first t-shirt. But no, one kish. Yeah, no, but seriously, I think that like, yes, yeah, I'm talking about your main bass lead during your drop. The main thing is, it's just it feels dull because, and here I'm not gonna say this right now. It feels dull because you basically have. I wonder if I can screenshot this just so I can. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and look at this. Let's observe, because it's close. It's like really quite close. Let's make this a little bit bigger here. So the problem here is you got a nice little fundamental here, which is good. Oh god, that is way too small. Let's get the brush. Let's get red. Okay, got a really nice fundamental here, which is nice. And then you've got this shape here, which is good, right? Like that's all good. And then you have this happening, which is what I would say is really killing your song here. So you have this kind of area, this region here is kind of punching up really high. And then all your highs are kind of lower than that. So the shape of your song is kind of like this, which it's not horrible. Like I was saying, it's not like the end of the world. But I think if you could flatten this out at the very least, or even go a little bit spicier, you would have a lot more of like a polished or like a clear feeling sound. And like, this is just looking at it, right? Like, obviously you want to feel this out. What I'm telling you do want to feel out, make sure it sounds good. But that's why I did really like Real's suggestion about adding like a noise layer or something high frequency oriented that is with your bass. So like, I think that there's a lot of ways to do this. Like, one of my favorite ways is, I think Real suggested this, put OTT on it. And you can kind of control. The thing about OTT is that it's a multi-band compressor. So what it allows you to do is pick and choose certain frequency ranges and boost them, like upwards compress them to where you want them to be. So like the high frequency, well, I would say 5. I mean, you could start with 1 and just see how that works. Usually I would say 2 is more than enough, but obviously if you want to add 5, add 5. Just, the big point that I'm trying to make here is you can use the high end area of the OTT, and kind of shape that high end to be at a level that you really want it to be at. And yeah, I would say this is mainly the main lead bass that I'm talking about here. So like that main sound, I think you could make it a little bit spicier, especially when you have all this other high end frequency stuff that's kind of battling with already. I would say you want it to be, I wouldn't say it's warmth. It's actually clarity is probably the word.
Air, sizzle.
Yeah. It's warmth would be what it already has. Like, it sounds very warm right now, but it's not quite pushing through the mix like it should, considering it's the main element of the entire drop. Yeah. And I think I agree with Dino's opinion of the intro. I know Rio said it was perfect. I think it's almost perfect. I think that it has a little bit too many frequencies, just a little bit. Like, I think you could cut out some more frequencies just to like starve the listener just a little bit more. That way that first drop hit is just like, Also, yeah, you can see how the bass levels during the intro and the drop, they kind of feel almost the same. So what I would do if I was you, I would high pass the bass in the intro. At the very least, I think that would help out the entire song a lot. Just be so that way when you do get to the drop and you remove that high pass, you turn it off or whatever, then you're giving the listener all this low end that they didn't have before. And that usually feels so good. Like, whenever you're taking those frequencies away and you're giving them back for the drop, it makes it feel impactful. But anyway, those are the big 2 things I would focus on. Let me just quickly read the questions here. I think that I agree with what everyone was saying so far. I think the sound works. Like, I don't think you need to add more variation to the sound itself. You just have to process it a little bit differently, like add that high-end sizzle. To answer your question as well, what effects other than OTT, I would say never be afraid of distortion. I mean, I love distortion for adding high frequencies. Like, most of the time I'll use thermal, but if you don't feel like spending money on thermal, you can always use, there's so many distortion plugins out there. I know Camel Crusher I've used, and that's really good. I like all the Ableton stock distortion. Amp is amazing for that. I love Amp.
Overdrive.
Yeah, Overdrive's another banger.
Final distortion too.
Yeah.
That shit gets a hang crispy.
Yeah, and combining the distortion with the OTT is, I think, really where you can very easily get that space to be filled. Because like, you could be very subtle with the distortion before the OTT, and then you put the OTT after it, and that just like brings out all of the sounds that you want almost. It's fascinating how OTT works in that way. But yeah, I think that combination is what would really benefit that sound. I think the vocal panning, I didn't notice anything bad about it, which is good. I did feel like by the end of the song, it was feeling a little bit repetitive. I don't know if there's a way that you feel you could maybe spice up the chops a little bit, maybe put a shaper box on it or Infiltrator if you have that. I personally use shaper box, but I know Infiltrator is pretty good at that too. You could also use Melda's Rhythmizer. There's all kinds of plugins that let you kind of like re-chop things up. You could also just manually take pieces of it and kind of like maybe have it follow the LFO bass. I think that could be cool too, just to kind of reinforce it at certain areas. And the overall mix. I feel like the snare isn't low enough for me. I mean, I don't know. There's a part of me that wants that snare to really punch in the same way, or at least in a similar way to the kick, and it's not
kind of
really,
dry.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that.
yeah. I think like either you could use a different snare, or you could layer something with it. I personally would pick a different snare, but I know that that's not always the good option. Sometimes it is good to layer, so I would explore that idea. Just maybe layer like a doof. I guess it's like a doofier snare. Is that the technical term?
Yeah.
Or maybe do some processing to it that makes it feel a little bit bigger. You could also add reverb to it. There's some reverb, but I'm thinking a little bit more forward, maybe reverb, like a little bit more aggressive reverb, but still a very cool song. I think it feels inspiring. Like the song itself is inspired. It has a story that it's telling. And that's why I think you don't really need to change the sound, the usage of the sounds. Like I think that especially with the main bass during the drop, there's nothing really wrong with repeating it the way you have here, because the sections are short enough that it doesn't get too repetitive. And I think you have enough arrangement variation from the notes that you're hitting that it feels interesting. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Definitely a cool track. I like the vibe. Did you guys want to add anything else? Any other ideas?
Nope. We usually only spend 25 minutes on a track if we really like it. So yeah.
All right. Well, good stuff, yo. Keep flexing. All right. Next up, we got the G himself. This crazy guy. This kooky lad. This hooligan. Some might even call him.
Is that too obvious? Okay, I like your confidence. Tell us what could come is okay. Like Kalani's, fragile like Kalani's. Okay, you let it party, You better start a whole fire, Now I'm on fire, I need someone, I need Tyler, I need money, Rebecca, Serena, Selena, let's start a whole choir, I like the way that you get you on back, you don't need no one help you inspire, But I'ma add to you, I'ma give you some best, I'ma add to you, see it. We're on the avenue and I ain't never seen no bad as you, buddy bad. You know what I'm saying, it's true, they can't disrespect you, I gladly shoot, I don't play about mine, I don't care, I'm addicted to you and it's clear. I love the way your body is that too obvious? Okay, I like your confidence, that's what could come is okay, like Kalani's, fragile like Kalani's, okay, you let it party, let it party. I like the way your body is that too obvious? Okay, I like your cockiness, fuck being confident, you bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's, you bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's. I like the way your body is that too obvious? Okay, I like your cockiness, fuck being confident, you bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's, you bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's, you bad just like Kalani's, bad just like Kalani's, bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's, you bad just like Kalani's, bad just like Kalani's, bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's. So match my energy, act like she into me. Tell the world you mine and you not what these bitches been to me. Plenty of fishes in the sea, I ain't need a biggest free. Step out like my wife, but bust me down like she my enemy. I need a brand new starting fight, I need a new one on my mind. I just need someone to fall in line. I only want it if it's in line, cause when I want it I take your time. Yeah, if I want it I make it mine. I like the way your body is that too obvious? Okay, I like your cockiness, fuck being confident, you bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's, you bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's. Baby you bad like me, baby you bad like me, bad like me, bad like me, bad like, baby you bad like, bad like, bad like, bad like me. I like the way your body is that too obvious? Okay, I like your cockiness, fuck being confident, you bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's, you bad just like Kalani's, just like Kalani's. Baby you bad like me, you bad like me, ought to get you a bag like me.
All right, I swear to God, if you post another track with a fucking double fake out on it, I'm gonna kill you, dude. All right, get out of the mindset that every track needs a fucking fake out. Okay.
No, it does. It does. It does.
All right.
We need
Especially when you have
7 fake outs in a row.
Especially when you have like the traditional clap buildup towards the end with that last drop, like, and then fucking you fake it out again. Like, dude, seriously, stop. Just fucking stop. All right, you don't need that. We don't. It's like it doesn't add anything either. Anyway, for this being YouTube to MP3 vocal rip, did I do okay on engineering these vocals sitting there on space? Yeah, I think you did. I think you did good. How can I denoise these vocals to get rid of all the excess fuzz? I think if you can't get rid of the fuzz, you lean into the fuzz and go for the telephone effect, which is just a band pass where the majority of the vocals are. Maybe you can like follow the vocals a little with a band pass. What are some ways I can make the low end of the sub cut through harder in the mix without sacrificing everything else? I think you would have to sacrifice anything else, not everything else. But yeah, sometimes you gotta make choices, and in the grand scheme of things, I feel like maybe bass is the choice you should make. That being said, I was really not expecting a drum and bass drop for the last one. Honestly, I felt like I could have gone for some like squelchy rhythm at the end there. Especially knowing you and like
Dino wants rhythm. What is this?
I'm just saying like that would have gone hard, like a complete switch up. Would have gone hard. But yeah, no, nice track. But I never said I wanted it to be rhythm. I said it could have been rhythm. It could have been. All right. You also could have done like some more like jump up kind of stuff, which is just rhythm, drum and bass at this point. But yeah. Anyway, I see Real staring longingly into the camera, patiently waiting his turn, licking his lips now.
Yeah, I don't know. This was super clean. You're really good at getting clean mixes in different genres, which is pretty insane because I've been making the same genre for 2 years and I still can't get a clean mix. But yeah, first drop felt super nice. I think there was room for the sub in the first drop. Like I didn't feel like I needed it to come through any more clear. And what I've noticed, essentially, when you're talking about getting the sub to come through cleaner in the mix, you're just looking at like the third harmonic and maybe like a little bit of the fourth. You just got to make sure like that space is not completely open, but the frequencies that are there other than the sub are pretty low. Because I mean, really, like the sub on like a big system, it's just your fundamental. I'm sure this would rip, but like in like phone speakers and in a car, like you're just looking at like third, fourth harmonic, second if you're in like a really low key. But I keep the second pretty low when I can. But yeah, again, I thought it came through super good on the first drop, and then there's just like you have a mid bass that's kind of occupying some space in the second drop. And it's kind of hard to have like your sub sustaining and your mid bass hitting a rhythm and have your sub be like super distinguishable. I almost think you wouldn't want that as much. You'd want the sub to be following the mid bass more, but I don't know. The sustained sub is tried and true, so okay, I can see why you did that. Yeah, I thought the vocals were good. I honestly didn't notice the de-essing until I read it, and then I really heard it. I don't think most people would notice it, especially like average listeners. And I don't really know how to get rid of that. I think Magdo does, so he'll probably tell you. But yeah, it was good considering it was a MP3 rip. Super good. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. I thought the DMB felt fine on the second drop. I wasn't like super hyped on it, but I don't think it put me off at all. Yeah, this is super clean, super good.
You know what would have made the DNB super hype? If it didn't fake out into it.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, so in the fake out, maybe have a different I'm all for fake outs, to be honest. Like I feel like they work. Yeah, I'm starting to hear like even like Vector does fake outs. I think they sound really, especially when you have the sub there, because then it's like you've given them at least something. It's not a full-on fake out. They're just like waiting for the drums to come in. Have something like rising during the fake out with the sub, like some high end layer, or you could like mangle the vocal or something like that. Just anything other than like just the sub that tells you that you're actually gonna bring the drums back. But yeah, no, this was super solid, super clean mix, and just keep getting better and better. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, Pollo's cracked. He's cracked out of his mind. He's too cracked. No, I'm just kidding. I feel like your first question is the answer to your first question rather is yes. I think that you did a great job at engineering the vocal space and making them sit nicely. I think that the vocals themselves had this harshness to it that I wasn't like a huge fan of. And I don't know if it's something as simple as just throwing a soothe on it, or if you don't have soothe, maybe like EQing some frequencies out dynamically or something along those lines. But there's a couple of frequencies that just feel.
I like the way your body is. Is that too obvious? Is that too obvious?
That you can hear it there, really like the when it does like the I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the glide. There's like this moment where it feels like a little harsh. And I think that if you just zero in on that frequency and remove it a little bit, you'll be fine. I think, and it's like really just during those sections, and that's just my opinion. But the denoise, there's like a bunch of different ways to get rid of stuff like that. I personally have been using the Waves AI vocal removing plugin. I forget what it's called. I think it's called Clarity, and that works really well. But it isn't free. But there's like so many different answers to that. There's like RX7 or what is it now, RX11. I use RX7, but they're on the they've released like 5 versions, but it does the same thing. No, yeah, there's a bunch of websites. Like I've used like I think it's called it's like LALAAI, and that has worked pretty well in the past. There's like a bunch of different. You kind of have to explore and find what works best for you, because I think all of them can achieve similar things. And the problem is that there's always going to be a little bit of, spectral weirdness going on. And I find that I like the Waves Clarity because you can kind of like mix that in to like how much you want it to be there. So you can kind of find this middle ground where you're getting rid of enough to where the vocals can be used, but you're not like fully spectralizing them and making them feel all like kind of just not organic, I guess. And then to answer your third question, I don't really know. I feel like I know what you're saying. The sub didn't really feel like it was cutting through quite as much as I would like. I do like Real Suggestion and adding more harmonics and making it basically just more full, or at least boosting some of the harmonics and making it more full. But something that I have explored recently is using a ring modulator on everything except the sub bass, and the I should say everything that isn't drum related and the sub bass, and having the sub bass sidechain into the ring modulator on like the bus that everything else is in, and essentially creating like a feeling of distortion. But I don't know if that would really work in this song. Like I can share. I was going to pull it up because I wanted to show you the exact feeling. Because I have the. Let me put it down.
The answer is always ring mod.
Y'all wish you'd seen some shit like this, cause then you might have known that I weaponized bliss.
Like you can hear the. Let me see if I can find a section where there's not vocals. Like, and you can kind of feel how the sub is basically, I don't want to say
Wouldn't sound good.
It's like distorting it almost. And it's one of those things where it lets my mix still be like super full and filled with all this spicy stuff. But then you're basically creating this feeling of like the low end overtaking things, or maybe like everything else sitting on top of that low end. So yeah, I would say M-Ring mod. Try that. Just try experience. And I specifically use M-Ring mod, so the Melda one, it's free. So yeah, I would experiment with that. I actually found that out from a Copycat live stream. So shout out to Copycat for blessing us with knowledge. I mean, that guy is just awesome. But anyway, yeah, I think that it sounds really good, and I would try that on this track. It might add a little bit of nastiness to it, which would make me kind of feel like Dino's idea about the rhythm energy later on, kind of like nudges you into that direction a little bit, but I don't know. It's something that's worth trying, I think. But all in all, yeah, dude, your mixes are clean. I think it sounds good. It just needs like a little bit of spice. I think the vocals sounded pretty dang good as is. I didn't really notice that noisiness that you're talking about. I just noticed that little bit of harshness every once in a while when she hits certain notes. But I don't know. That's just my thoughts. But cool track. All right. Thank you, Poyo. Thank you as always. Flexing. Oh goodness.
My body is ready for this.
Oh golly.
My body is ready.
Oh my god. Wow. I mean, I can just, I don't know if, who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
All right.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I feel like it doesn't sound too busy at any point. I'm just going to tell you that. I think it sounds like great. I think you have like just the right amount of things happening at any given moment, which is super cool. I think that is inspiring, to say the very least. You are really good at giving us just enough stuff to be excited. Which is just, yeah, good stuff, Cal. Are the ear candy and background noises enough? Should I write a melodic or harmonic counterpart for this? So I think that it wouldn't be bad with the counterpart that you're talking about, but I don't think it needs it. Like, I think that it sounded like perfectly minimal as it is. So I would say no. I mean, are they enough? Yes. And should you write a new counterpart? I'm going to say no. The last question, do all the basses sound powerful and level? Are the heavy FM basses too much with the clean low end basses, or does it hit that hitty hey or hitty hit? Jesus. If I could read, maybe. No, I feel like they don't. Like, I think you're talking about. Hang on, let me find it. Those basses. I think they just sound a little bit thin compared to everything else. And I don't know if that's something as simple as just making them a bit louder, maybe making them like clearer. They sound almost like thin. So I would say maybe like more mid range on them, a little bit more high end too, could benefit that sound. But yeah, I do think that those specific timbres don't quite slap in the mix. But everything else is perfect. So I would say like experiment with just how you're processing those sounds a little bit more. And then you've got yourself a certified banger. This was crazy. Those are my thoughts, gang. Yeah.
Go ahead, Real.
I listened to this again with my volume up really high. This is insane. The like movement on the low end is like intimidating. The way you like pull into some of those moments and then just like hits with that super percussive sub, that shit's just incredibly clean. All the high end layers were like perfect. They add to the flow. The flow is really cool too. It's like danceable, but it's super danceable, but it's also super unique, which is a balance that I have yet to find, because it's hard to like restrain yourself and also make it translate to other people so they understand like what you're trying to do and keep it like musical and dancey. So super good job with that. Yeah, ear candy was enough. It was perfect. You definitely should write a melodic counterpart for this. That would be super cool. Yeah, I thought that they were powerful and heavy. They weren't like high end heavy, which was nice. They were like low end aggressive. So it was just super good. Heavy bass. Yeah, that one that Mag pointed out, the like noise bass, maybe just like with the timbre a little bit, but nothing felt like it was out of place. Like everything seemed to fit pretty perfectly. Yeah, it's that hit the hitty hit. Honestly, I can't really Feef this. It's really good.
Are you done not Feefing it?
I'm done not Feefing it.
Okay. All right, fam. So whenever people ask me, like, "Oh, you live right outside of San Francisco, don't you?" I'm like, "Nah, fuck San Francisco. Sacramento's where the real bass music is at." This is why I say that. This is the cutting fucking edge right here. The edge is so cutting on this. But yeah. Anyway, let's see. Does it sound too busy sometimes? The only time it feels a little bit busy is when you up the pace on the rhythm on some parts, but then you don't maintain it, and kind of like I'm wondering why. Especially because like Real said, you have that like super percussive sub bass that's like really sick, and I think where you could have a counter melody or a harmonic, like you could use that as a call, and then you could have a high end doing a similar motif or the same thing as a response, and just have it be a 1-to-1, like boom 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 boom, boom 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 boom, and then that's the only addition I would make. Do all the basses sound powerful and level? I have to agree with Magdo here. Sometimes like the FM basses and like the not percussive sub just doesn't hit with the same level of bass as the like straight up sub bass does. So that could be something that you could address or look into or investigate fixing. But yeah, no, I don't really want to speak on this track because I know that like you cook like a motherfucker. And yeah, this is good shit, bro. Are you playing these tracks out yet?
Yeah, I want to hear this on a proper system.
Yeah. Are you playing
even
these tracks
here
out
with my
yet?
volume turned up, it sounds pretty insane.
Are you playing these tracks out yet? I'm gonna keep asking until you answer.
Yeah, that track was insane. That was one of the coolest arrangements I've heard in a long time.
I'm about to straight up message this guy on Facebook. Are you playing these tracks out yet? Are you playing these tracks out yet? Not really. He just started these 2 days. Yeah, but maybe not this one, but like the other ones that you've been posting for the past month or so. Like, are you playing those ones out yet? So I know you just did a show like in November that was pretty big. So some of the others, yeah, you fucking better be, dude. Like, this shit's cutting edge.
Dude, like this flow. So gas, dude. Just so fire.
Yeah,
I don't know,
that's sick. It's minimal and maximal at the same time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and literally it was just that one sound for me. Like every other, and even the placement of those sounds was perfect. It's just the timbre of it that, like, I can't believe that's insane. That's nuts. Considering how minimal this is. I'm sorry, I'm shook.
No, I'm done here too. Fucking I think the only way that Concow could improve is if he started showing up to Flock Clips on Thursday and Sunday nights at 9:00 Eastern, 6:00 Pacific. I'm just saying. I think that's literally the only way he can get better at this point.
He would win them all immediately.
Yeah, I'm not trying to flip against Concow. Stay at home. Don't pull up. It's not fun.
Anyway, hey, thanks for that, Concow.
Yeah, thank you for that journey. All right, next up we got Vision.
Before we start tearing this with a new asshole, can you play like the last 15 seconds of the drop again, please? All right. I just needed to confirm what I was hearing. All right.
Who wants to go first?
I guess I'll go first. What other elements should I add for the intro build? I feel like that was a really good tease of an intro into a drop. That really tickled some ganglias there. That being said, though, it gets to be really samey really fast. And I think, well, so there's a change up that you do about halfway through the first drop that I feel like should happen sooner. But I think like a main issue here is it's just like it's the same sounds with the same flow, camping the same note the whole time. Like, and it sucks because this is like really good stuff. Like I really enjoyed this. However, that being said, how does the mix sound overall? The mix sounds good overall. I just wish that like your sub was doing some of the same LFO movement, like you had a volume automation on the sub doing the same thing that your mid bass is doing, and the way you have the mid bass playing the same thing but with more harmonics, it makes it sound lower. So that's cool. That adds some variation. So you could theoretically keep the first drop exactly how it is, maybe move that switch up a little bit earlier. You could do that. But then on the second half, like I'm needing some sort of pitch movement, brother. Like I can't live on D1 the whole time. And something that you could very easily do is just put a pitch envelope and just have it going up with each bar. So it's like, if that makes sense. And that would like that could probably just solve the sameness of it. It would change so much, like without changing very much at all, especially with the way the that goes. So yeah, put a little bit of volume shaping on that sub for the second half, because like right now it's just a sustained sub and then everything else is pulsing. And if you're gonna have stuff pulsing, like you need that sub to like throb and wob, you know what I'm saying? Like it needs to be like, especially if it's such a girthy sub, like it needs a little bit of a pulse to it. That's my I guess that's not really addressing the mix at all. The mix was clean. Like it was a sub, it was a mid element, the percussion sounded good, the drums sounded good. Like nothing really jumped out to me aside from it being like super samey. And the way you could fix that sameness is just to do a little bit of pitch stuff. If you're not gonna resound design something new. But yeah. Anyway, that's me. You guys go ahead.
Do you want to go next, Real? Or should I?
Oh yeah. Sorry,
babe.
getting
No,
sidetracked.
you're good, bro.
Yeah, I mean, Dino kind of hit it. The sound is nice. It does get a little repetitive though. it didn't bother me in the first drop so much. But by like the second half of the second drop, I was ready for something else. And I mean, like you can. I know Dino said not to do this, and it's true. But also there's whole genres that are like rooted around just camping on one note. But if you're gonna do that, you gotta be tasteful with like pitch bends and like sound design variation.
I literally just said he
or
could
like
pitch bend upwards. What do you mean? I said
Yeah.
not to do that.
Yeah, or even like a quick pitch bend envelope on like the beginning of each 4 bars, like a doo
Yeah,
doo doo doo. So
That would be sick.
like that does a lot, and it sounds good on big systems when you're like just kind of throwing the sub all over the place. But yeah, I mean like I don't know, this stuff's hard for me to give FIFA on because I know it's supposed to be minimal. Play with different flows though. Like for the second half, like something like distinctly different would have been nice. And sometimes when I get like I don't really know what to do, I just kind of fuck around with what's it called, automating the LFO tempo. And then sometimes you get like weird cool flows out of it, and then you can kind of copy and paste that and like build it into something more coherent, cohesive. Wait, were there questions?
Yeah, there's questions. The first question is, what other elements should I add for the intro build? The second question is the flow to repetitive. Third question is, how does the mix sound overall?
He just accidentally deadened himself and muted
Sorry.
himself.
Sorry.
Okay.
It is super clean.
I was reading the questions to you, and you deafened.
Sorry, I think I clicked on the wrong button.
All right, question 1. What other elements should
Wait,
I
I
add
see him.
for
I
the
see him.
intro
I see
slash-
him.
Okay.
Oh, also, I really like the intro was super nice. It led perfectly into it, and it felt just like so good when the drums did come in. That was probably my favorite part, just the transition from like intro into like a little bit of the first drop. I get, and this shows in my music to a point where it's like some of my stuff is not flowy because I switch it too often. So I haven't really found that balance yet either, but I'm in the opposite direction. It's just really hard for me to listen to one thing over and over. In a live setting, it's a little bit better because it's so loud that I'm kind of people don't really care if you do the same thing over and over, but like in terms of just sitting down and listening to a track and appreciating it, it's hard for me to really appreciate it with so much repetition. And if you're going to repeat certain things, you got to try to vary other things even if it's slight. What other elements should I add for the intro build? I don't know. I think the intro build was good. It was minimal and it felt really good. I think it would mix really well into like with other songs in a set. It'd be really easy to put into a set. How does the mix sound? Yeah, I mean, I guess we got all these. Mix was really good. Flow too repetitive. Yeah, a little bit. Just kind of play around with LFO rate. And yeah, Dino said LFO the sub in some places. Just LFO it a lot less than the actual bass. Like you don't want the sub going all the way down and all the way back up, but you do want it moving a little bit. And you can even do that. Like I've seen like Lucid Slip and like rhythm artists, rather than LFOing it, they just have a 12-step pitch bend and then they just restart the note and it feels like it's LFOing because it punches up at the beginning of every note. Yeah, that's all I got. This is good though. Super good.
Heck yeah. Yeah. So I'm pretty much in total agreement with what all y'all are saying. Cause no, I mean, here's the thing. Like the intro is great. I don't think you need to add anything. I think it is great. I agree with both. I think both of you guys said that too. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The big thing that I didn't like almost immediately, and I am like brutal when it comes to this aspect of music. So take this with like a slight grain of salt. But yeah, it was like way too repetitive. Like I would be turning this off. Like, hang on, I'm just being real, right? Like, I would pause this. All right, let's just listen from the beginning, right? I'd be done right there. I'd be done. I would be bored. I'd be like, I can't keep listening to this song. And that's just because I think that it really takes such a small amount of time and energy just to change like a little bit of the timbre. And that's what like keeps me super interested and like excited about what's happening in the song, especially in a song as minimal as this. So whenever I don't hear a timbral improvement or change, or whatever you want to call it, dynamicness, I just immediately am just like turned off as a listener. And that may be like just me, right? Like I'm sure there's other people who don't have that much of an issue with that, but I think that every 4 bars you could do something with the timbre to this bass. And it doesn't even have to be like reinventing the wheel. You could be like opening up the low pass that you have on it a little bit more, or maybe adding like a harmonic series, section to it, or I don't know, adding like a second, like another octave on top with the same, I don't know. There's so many different things you could do to make it like more dynamic from a timbral perspective. And yeah, that to me is what I felt was really the most lacking in the song. I think that the flow is pretty good. There's certain parts where I didn't really get the flow. Like there's this one section here where I think that section where you cut the drums out and had that little flow thing, I personally didn't groove with that. I think you could make that a little bit more groovy. It just feels like a little random and like hard to like bop to. What I would say is like try and have your head like really bobbing before that section, and then see if you can kind of maintain that similar kind of movement with your body when the drums leave. Because if there are 0 drums, that means your listener is only grabbing onto the sounds that are there, which is in this case just the bass. So it has to be like very groovy and like keep people moving in the same way that you want them to be moving. Otherwise it feels jarring, and I feel like in this case it felt sort of jarring. But all right, that being said, I think you can get away with the flow being as repetitive as it is. It's just it needs timbral changes. Like I think that would make this song flex. And I do kind of agree with camping the root note not being the vibe. I think that you could do it if you had enough timbral changes, but you really got to make sure you got those timbral changes if you're sitting on one note, because not only are you sitting on one note, but you have the same timbre the whole time. So it is like extra rough as a listener who is looking for some kind of dynamicness, which most people seem to really like in music. I think a lot of people that listen to music are excited about dynamics, and that's what gets them like hyped about the song and feel the song in a really excited way. At least that's how I've noticed my tastes are. But yeah, I think that the mix. Okay, so the mix is, I think, almost great. I think the biggest thing that I didn't like is I felt like the sub was like a little bit too loud. Like the sub felt like, and maybe that's because of what they were saying earlier. And by they I mean Real and Dino. I think they made a great point by if you had some dynamicness with that sub, it would feel a lot better. But because it's just this legato note and it's just so loud, it just feels like off-putting from a mix perspective, because I feel like it's just too loud in the mix. But if it was moving, it probably wouldn't feel as loud, because it wouldn't just be like this constant thing. It would be a little bit more dynamic, which means you'd have more moments where it wasn't as loud as it currently is. So I would say without any LFO movement, it is definitely too loud. And I think if you added the LFO movement, and by that like the same kind of movement as the bass, it would add enough dynamics to it where it would probably be fine. What is Sofa King saying? Minimal is great for mixing. What about squeezing the track? How to do that?
So can I soapbox for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I feel like there's like the triangle of change, right? You either have to change the flow, you have to change the melodic content, so the note, or you have to change the sound design, the timbre, right? Like 2 out of 3 of those things, like you got to swap one every section, right? And if you don't, it's just gonna feel samey and boring. And if you have if you change just one of those 3 elements for every section, like you can get a pretty dynamic track without having to change very much. And the easiest one to change is probably the timbre. You just swap out the sound, or you change a knob 5%. And that's my soapbox. That's all I gotta say. Like those 3 things, change one every section, and like your track will transform by the time you get to the end. But more on that in Magdu's fractal technique on YouTube. Just check that out, and you'll figure out how to make like morphing timbral sound design kind of stuff. All right.
Yeah. No, you're speaking facts. Like, I feel like timbre is such a big thing that if you can just change that throughout the song, you could pretty much camp the same. I camp the F note in my tracks a lot, but it works out because every single sound is just so dynamic from the previous one. So you don't really notice that it's on the same note because it's doing something completely different and feels completely different. But yeah, I don't know what Sofa King was trying to ask. I feel like
I think he's messing with this.
yeah, I think he is trolling slightly, but I think he has a good point about squeezing the track a little bit. I think if you clip that sub a little bit, it would be a little bit better, a little bit less kind of just outlandishly loud. I don't know, it just feels so loud. Like, I feel like there's no dynamic processing on it. So yeah, if you clip it, I think it would help a lot. But yeah, no, I think those are my thoughts. I don't know. I think it's a cool track though. I think it's like on its way to being really dope. It's just, like I said, I told you where I would stop listening to this track, and I told you why. So I hope that helps you feel inspired to go a little bit deeper on the timbre, or at the very least try and keep people like really excited, you know? Give me a reason to be like, oh my God, yo, what? You know, like that's what I'm thinking you want people to be feeling. So yeah, cool track though. Keep flexing. The timbres are there too. So yeah, I think Fractal Technique video is what he needs in his life, because he knows what he wants to do. He just has to go a little bit deeper, a little bit.
I'm starting to think that we're gonna have to have like recommended watching or recommended reading in a pinned comment somewhere.
Yeah, I think you're right, because the Fractal Technique is like it's like what, a 30-minute video, but most of the information is in the first 5 to 10 minutes. And then the last 20 minutes is like showing you how to do it.
Examples and demonstration. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that video I spent such a long time trying to figure out how I would explain it. And I feel like it's the best explanation that I was able to muster up in regards to dynamics and timbre.
It's just like 5 to 10% iterative changes, like when it comes down to it. But the way you explain it and the point that you make in there, it's like, for people who don't know about that kind of thing, which seems to be like 60 to 70% of people that are in producing for 5 or less years, it feels like. Yeah, that's something that they should all check out.
Yeah, it just touches on points that are like, I try and make it super easy to understand, and it's one of those things where it guarantees you the listener's attention, I would say. Like, even if you're camping this note the whole time, I would say it wouldn't matter if you had timbral changes. Or at least matter as much. I do think that getting a little spicy with the arrangement on the bass notes is always something that feels good, but not necessary.
Right. And it's like, it's for the other deep dubstep track that we heard tonight, the one that had the UKG in there. I feel like the same thing could be here. Like, if you do like a 5% iterative change on the timbre for the bass, like with each hit, like that would be cool. With each bar, that would be cool. And it's the reason you only want to change one out of 3 of those things is because your listener needs something to reference back, or so that they understand, like, you already have them going in this, like, they need to be able to recognize that there's something like that calls back to what has already been. You know, you can't unburden them from what has been too much, if you know what I'm saying.
I think the only time that's not the case is when you are leading up to it intentionally with, like, you know, some kind of reversing and like frequency cutting, and like you're basically building up again inside of like a mini build up, right? Like in between each section. Like if you're actually building up to something to let people know that there's going to be a change. And even then you usually have to reference what you're about to show them in that build up. So that way they're like ready for the big change that's about to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's
all right.
facts.
Are we ready to move on to the next track?
I think so. Yeah, thank you, Vision. That was dope. Keep flexing. I believe in you. All right. Next we got Mysterium 5 Freeze Real. Dang, Real. You better be careful.
Nice
Go
fade
ahead,
out.
real. Go ahead, real.
Yeah, I'll go.
I know you.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, this was fire. I see the vision. This is very close to, I think, like as good as you want it to be. The only thing that stuck out to me, the okay, so first you did this thing in the kind of like the intro, but there were still drums, so like I guess that's still technically the intro. I never know what to call that. It's like kind of a drop, but it's not really a drop. It just gets you ready for it. You bring this sound in one time, like very quick, and it doesn't come back until I think you start using it in the first drop. Stuff like that is super, super, super good. Like when you have a really good sound and it only comes in like a couple times, it makes the listener like listen closer because they think they're like waiting to hear it again. Um, and no sound, no matter how good it is, if you play it enough times, it starts to wear itself out. So keep doing like little moments like that. Like really spend time crafting sounds that you're only gonna use for like fucking 3 seconds for the whole song. It really pays off, I swear. Um okay, I was gonna say the one thing that stuck out to me is I see what you're doing with the chops. I do like the way you chopped everything. I think there's times where you're chopping everything the same though, and it comes off just like a little jarring. It doesn't necessarily put me off of the rhythm, but it is just a little bit. I think you should let some things ride while, like, if you're chopping the bass, you don't need to also chop your like atmospheric high end. You can kind of let it run. Also, if you put a delay on it, you have like that nice chop, and then you could have it kind of fade out in a delay, which I think would be nice because it's doing really cool rhythms.
I just
And I
want to
think
say
it could
real
help it feel
that
less like a
that was
wait,
fucking
what?
big brain. I'm sorry. I just kind of like envisioned what you just said, and that is such a fucking cool idea. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That is a great idea.
Yeah, I feel like it would make it less abrupt because it kind of still it fades back into the song. Yeah, hold on. Let me see the questions. This was really good though. Just I want to make that clear. I really like this. I can tell you put a lot of work into it and it shows. Started slightly more. Oh wait, are there not questions? Or are they on the SoundCloud?
Peep the stream. Peep the stream. They're on the SoundCloud, or unless you have it pulled up.
Oh, I see. Low mids perhaps too heavy. I don't know. To be honest, low mids are a weird topic because for a long time I was told all my stuff was low mid heavy and it like wasn't gonna sound good on a big system, and now some of my stuff that's like pretty low mid heavy sounds good on big systems. One thing I will tell you though is you don't want sustaining frequencies really loud in the low mids. You can have moments where it's like that's the reason the kick drum sounds so good because it's this like really loud sweep through the low mids. Then of course it hits a sub too, but I mean like the main impact of the kick is just like a spike in the low mids. So quick things like that are fine. It's once you start like letting stuff sustain there for a long time. On big systems it sounds really bad. You'll blow car speakers out. That's how I blew the speakers out of my Subaru. I had this like loud ass sustain bass with the low mids just pumped super heavy. So yeah, I don't know. If you don't feel like they're like sustaining for too long, then they're probably fine. And I mean, worst case scenario, get like Pro Q or God, what's the free one? There's
Nova.
Is it Nova?
Yeah,
Yeah,
TDR
TDR
Nova,
Nova.
yeah.
Use a dynamic EQ and like put it on your bass bus or like group all your basses, put it on, and then have it dip it when it gets like really loud. When it comes to making a bass hit, yeah, I mean that's just like a combination of I think you were doing the pitch envelopes, that or it was the kick. I couldn't really tell. That's one way to make a bass punch really hard though. Have like a quick pitch envelope on it, like an 808 style, but not like as drastic as an 808. Just like a quick little punch. Most of the time, it's gonna get sidechained out. If you're doing your sidechain deep though, so I don't know. But it is one way to make it punch. Power from the low. That's what I attempted on this track. Yeah, this is true. That's the low mids. That's why they're like weird because they're bad, but they're also good and they're super essential. And the second you dip them too low, your track sounds like super dry. So I might even argue that it's better to be a little bit heavy than completely dry, especially on like AirPods and like computer speakers or even studio monitors. It's gonna sound better. It's just once you start turning it up really loud in the car or putting it on a really big system, that's when the low mids are kind of going to fall apart. To be honest though, if you're not playing shows, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just don't let the low mids go way above your sub. You can have moments where they're as loud, but I'd say pretty much without fail, you never want them louder than your sub. Of course, you could probably pull up an example where that sounds good, that somebody's done it, but just for the most part. Mix is good. Sound design was good. Make this basses less muddy. That's so funny that you ask because mud comes from the low mids. So if you're noticing it's muddy, that means you have most of the time too many things going on in the low mids. So just if you have loud noises in your low mids, don't have too loud noises in the low mids because yeah, that's going to make it super muddy. And don't take them out. Just like dip them because you'll notice when you take them out, you're like, wow, this sounds like shit now. It's not warm anymore. But yeah, I went through this phase too, where I just like struggled super hard with low mids. You'll figure it out eventually. And there's like I said a couple of the things that I kind of live by, but also it's a little bit up in the air. It depends on what sound system you're playing on too. If you play on like a really nice sound system for experimental bass, low mids sound great. If the system's tuned for like rhythm, they don't sound so great. But yeah, no, this track is super good. Just kind of play with the low mid, see what sounds good to you. Reference it on different systems. Like turn it up in your car, turn it up on your iPhone, see, and get like a good balance between them. But yeah, that's all I got. Good job.
Go ahead, Matt.
Okay. Yeah. So here's my thoughts. I'm gonna do it again. I know. We've probably seen this drawn a billion times now, but I'm gonna do it
Just
again.
save it at this point, dude. Just fucking save it.
So like this is really what you want your track to look like. Maybe this, maybe that at times. But the long story short of it is it around like maybe 100 hertz. You have this thing where you have like a maybe 120 depending on the song, right? You have this thing where you have a little bit of a dip here before it starts kind of reaching your mid frequencies, which are like, you know, like 500 or whatever. And the reason why is because you want clarity in especially the lows and highs. So you want your sub to be very clear, and you want your highs to be very clear. And in this track in particular, I feel like, and we can even do a quick little just because we can look at his exact song and see what's happening. All right, so you can see here your track is pretty flat. Like your track is looking like a line. And I would say maybe for being really kind, there's this thing happening. But I would say, and maybe like a little bit of this, right? But I would say for the most part, it's basically straight, and you have no real dip showing like where your sub is. Like your sub is essentially like, now I was clicking and holding down, so it's gonna not be as accurate. But the point that I'm trying to make is you want to make sure that you have a really defined low end. And I can tell you're not using a dedicated sub on this track, which is fine. I've been learning you can get away with that. But the only way to get away with that is if you have a really defined low frequency area. And that's like below that 120 hertz-ish area. And, okay, you are. Then that actually makes it even easier. I didn't realize that. So it sounds like it's not as stable as it could be, which means you might want to either high pass your mid basses more, or turn your sub up more. I would say it doesn't feel sturdy enough then if you are using a dedicated sub. But long story short, what I'm trying to say is that the muddiness is coming from that range between, you know, what is that, like 100 or 120 and like 300. This whole area here, this section here is creating all that mud for you. Like it's it's usually as simple as high passing your mid basses or turning down those frequencies in your mid basses. You don't always have to high pass them. You can always use a band pass sort of thing, or not band pass, but a bell curve EQ. And I feel like personally, you could also boost the highs on your basses as well. That can also help with muddiness, because that's going to bring like more clarity to the feeling of the sound, because you're going to be accentuating what our ears are more sensitive to, and that is like higher frequencies. And yeah, no, I think the biggest thing that I didn't like about, and this is my opinion, of course, but I feel like the sidechain could be a little bit more felt. I really don't think that you might not even have a sidechain. I'm actually not 100% sure, but it feels like it's either really transparent or not there at all. And I feel like on this track in particular, it could benefit from a little bit of that pumpiness, just a little bit, you know, like not a lot, but yeah. And that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with short side chains. It's just, I would make it a little bit more obvious, because the kick is getting lost in the mix. And I don't think it's necessarily because it's too quiet. I think it's just that it's not really like felt, and that sidechain can help you feel the kick more. Especially when the bass is hitting as well. Like when the bass and the kick is happening at the same time there, like you could even tell, like it just feels like the kick is kind of just like underneath it, which is not what you want. You want them both to be at the same level, but you want them both to have their own space for a period of time. And that means when you have the kick hitting, you want that thing to be like it. I don't want to say like the only thing happening, but you really want it to be like felt. Maybe not so much with the snare. I mean, like I would say you could test it out with the snare a little bit, but definitely the kick. And yeah, no, I think, I hope that answers your questions. Yeah, the less muddy thing, like the mix overall though is really good. It's just, yeah, there's this low mid section here, this 1 to 300-ish range, where there's just a little bit too much energy and your sub is lost. Like I think there are areas. You can see that your mids here are just full. Like they are easily as loud as the sub, sometimes even a teeny bit louder. So yeah, I would just focus on that frequency range and just try and bring them down like a little bit. And boost the highs. Experiment with boosting the highs. It might not be necessary in this track, but I would say test it out and see what happens because it might bring a little bit of clarity. But yeah, those are my thoughts. That is all I have to say. I think the track overall is really fun, though, and the sound design's great. Reminds me of Rez. Has that Rez energy.
All right. You remember earlier when I said downsampled and bit crushed is not it? Sorry, brother, but for me, the downsampled and the bit crushed super yoys just were not it. Especially with everything else going on, I feel like the oriental scales that you're using for this track call for a more like holistic and realistic sounding like bass layer. I just feel like that's way too electronic for the rest of the track, especially with like the piano and all that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna address your questions. For the main basses, I feel like the low mids are perhaps too heavy. What is your impression? I'm confused when it comes to making basses hit. On the one hand, I hear that power comes from the low mids, and that's what I attempted on this track. On the other hand, when analyzing tracks from my favorite artists, I see big dips around 200 hertz. Yeah, do the big dips around 200 hertz. It's not 200 hertz, but I would say like cut the second harmonic for sure. And I think Magda already showed the frequency response thing. He already showed the picture, the one photo to rule them all. So yeah, that's that. You're already referencing, so just reference even for mixing. What are steps I can take to make those basses less muddy? I feel like Real and Magda probably already addressed that really well, so I'm not going to take up time readdressing that. Fully cut second harmonic, yeah. Get rid of it. Snip, snip, bye. Make it go gone. Like we don't need that. It just adds distortion higher up the chain, and you're not going to be able to hear it on something like this anyway. So like, there's no point really in having it in there. I really like this track. I feel like I think Magda and Percy probably addressed it pretty well. That like, I'm just gonna read Percy's comment in its entirety. With bass music, you want your sidechain to be a creatively obvious thing. That's probably quite right here. But yeah, no, nice track. First time. Oh no, it's not our first time seeing it here. But definitely enjoyed this, and I'd like to see where this goes. Just to humor me, replace all of those yoys with like a more organic sounding like bass, and just see where that goes. But yeah, I don't want you to feel like I'm not like addressing your questions or your track, but I feel like the other two guys already said everything that I would say anyway. So yeah, nice track though. Definitely like the melodic elements. This is a great example of not camping the same notes over and over again. But yeah, I feel like we can maybe move on to the next one, boys.
Yep. Yeah. No, good track, bro. Keep flexing on it. I look forward to maybe seeing it again with the improvements. All right, we got Dub Disciple.
Ultimate. Yeah, it's like this. Rhythm. Ultimate. Music be the weapon of the future. Let it sound. Come on. Let it. It's like move to the music. Get down, let's flow. Move to the music.
Those nuts.
Yeah, can I quickly first say thank you for
Oh,
doing
yeah.
the fade out for me, bro? Thank you.
I
that.
I was like looking.
I'm
I was like,
serious.
the track is
What a guy.
ending, but
No, I mean that's some G shit, so that's hype. What?
all right. Well, you might as well start us
Yeah,
off then.
yeah.
Andrew.
I mean, so here's my opinion. I think that you know exactly what, like, this first question. I think you know. I think you know, and the
yeah,
answer is yes.
you wouldn't ask it. You wouldn't ask it if you didn't already know.
Yeah, you know for sure. I think that if you just if you have all that low end there, especially, like, obviously there's maybe a little bit other stuff other than the low end that I think you should maybe remove, like some high frequency stuff even. And all of this can be achieved with EQing or filtering, whichever you feel is more appropriate. But yeah, when you give people all that low end, when this drop hits, it just feels like no energy change is happening. So yeah, I would definitely remove as much of the low end as you can get away with, or at least as you can feel is comfortable to you. And then, give it to them. Give it to them when you get to this part. Another thing that I think, this is kind of not really in your questions, but I just want to quickly address it. I think that you are hitting some very low notes here, my good sir. I think you should either transpose this up a little bit or add some extra harmonics onto this. I think in general, though, transposing it up would be the better option, just because of how all of these sounds work together. Like, it would probably be pretty easy to transpose this stuff, especially if you're in Ableton. You could just warp any samples that you were using and then just transpose it all up. But that is just my thought on a way to fix those really, really low notes. The chorus, I feel like it's a little bit too much, and I think that you could get away with it, but the way that you would get away with it is by removing more frequencies from certain areas. So like the stringy part, for example. The strings that are all stereo-y, and then the synth saw that's like not so stereo-y, all of those need to have more mids removed, because what ends up happening, and a lot of people may not know this, but we're going to go back to Paint. Gotta love Paint. So there's this thing that happens when you start adding a bunch of mid frequency instruments here. So like, pretend this is at like 300 hertz or something. Like you have it high passed, right? But the problem is most instruments that are mid-range are going to have a fundamental that sits like, somewhere here, or maybe somewhere here, right? But the idea is you have this fundamental, and when you start stacking up all these fundamentals on top of each other, it just starts to get louder and louder and louder until it's like this really like overly loud mid-range. And I feel like that, I just closed out of all my tabs there. I feel like that is the problem. I feel like if you focus on trying to be a little bit more precise with these mid-range areas, you will be able to create a song that feels much more, I don't want to say overly busy, but it feels too busy. And I think it's not because of the instruments you're choosing or how many instruments you have there, but I think that it's just because you're giving us too many frequencies in certain ranges, especially that mid-range. I do think that the stereo-ness of the strings did feel a little weird, though. I would say whatever you're doing with that, I would not do it that way. I think if you want to add stereo width to that kind of stuff, you can do either a chorusing effect, or you could do a little bit of reverb. But I would say the way you're doing it currently is not really feeling organic, considering you're using a very organic instrument. I also think that the stereo left-right panning of the bass, mid-bass thing was definitely not a good vibe. I did not enjoy it, and I just think it's going a little bit too far in one direction, in both directions rather. So like when you are reaching the far left side or the far right side, it's like too far, and there's nothing like counteracting that feeling on either side. It just kind of feels like strange. I don't know how to describe it. It's not grabbing me in the way that I'm thinking you want it to. is the sub loud enough relative to the mid basses, and is it coming through clean? If so, the short answer is not really. Like, and I think the reason why is you're hitting notes that are super super low, and I'm on headphones right now. But even if I was on a sub system, I just know that it's just not gonna replicate on like most things. And even if it did, see, like that D note hits, but then you get these C notes that you're hitting just don't really feel good. And I also think that the way you could fix this is by doing what I suggested at the beginning, just transpose everything. I think that there's no reason why this song needs to be sitting in the key that it's sitting, considering the arrangement, and that is an opinion. But I've found that for most bass music, D sharp minor is great. You could also try and stick to this key, but maybe don't use C0 as much. Just try and find a different note that might work. But I feel like if you want to keep that do 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 do, you could do that in any scale. You could do that in like any scale. That's I think minor, and it would work. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you. I do think that the vibes are there, the timbres are there, the mix is not there, and I would say a lot of that is just because you've chosen a very strange key to work in for this style of music. But those are my thoughts. I'm a little bit
Go ahead,
savage
Real.
with it.
Go ahead, Real.
Okay. The main thing I was looking at on Minimeters, the sub was pretty stereo. I don't know if that's because it's not independent, or sometimes when I get, like, this is obviously pretty loud. When I start pushing stuff really loud, if the low mids are stereo, somehow the sub becomes stereo if they like hit a clipper on the master channel. I still can't really figure out why that happens, but I promise you it happens. Especially if you're like pushing two things into the same clipper, somehow they just like get washed into each other and stereo information gets down where you don't want it. But yeah, and I mean, we were talking about low mids earlier. That's another way to get stuff unmuddy. Stereo low mids sound fire on headphones. They do not sound fire pretty much anywhere else. And you got to be super careful with how stereo they are. And like if they're stereo throughout the whole song, you can pretty much guarantee the song's going to be muddy unless you just have one patch and the patch doesn't need like a ton of high-end clarity. Yeah, also there was something panned super hard right. I put my headphones on. I even like flipped them around to make sure because I can't hear super good out of my left ear. I have like a little bit of hearing damage, so sometimes stuff that's panned right, like it just really fucks with me because I can't tell, like, is it actually panned right or is it my brain? But this one was actually panned right because I flipped my headphones and I could hear it in the left. For adding stereo spread, I don't really like just straight panning stuff. There's so many different ways you can do it to sound good. Like micro shift, which is paid. I was using that for a while on basses. I just like slap it on the end. Cohen Sound uses Valhalla Vintage Verb, so I've been doing a bunch of that lately. Just like you put a really short reverb and then you create a chain with the reverb and then you EQ out the lows and the highs and you kind of roll it off so it sounds more natural, like instead of like a super sharp cut. And then it makes your whole bass like super stereo in a pleasant way. Also, for like melodic stuff, I know some kid that used to come around a lot. He's super talented. Willow, WLOW. I saw his project file once, and he takes the utility and a shaper, and he just pans it left right with a shaper, so it's like consistent before it hits a reverb. So you can't hear that it's like panning super hard left right. It's not going all the way either. It's like 25 in each direction, and then when it hits the reverb, it just like really spreads it out. That's for like melodic stuff. But yeah, for basses, like reverb, serum effects, dimension expander, even unison detune. And then most of the time you want to put a utility on it and like mono lows at like around 150. So you can have like some stereo in your low mids. Just you don't really want it throughout the whole track. And you definitely don't want the sub stereo. There's pretty much never a reason to do that, other than it sounds really good on headphones. And I know it like sucks that it doesn't translate to anything else. But I mean, if you're ever going to play something out, I guess you could just make it mono on the version that you're going to play out. Sorry, that was just a tangent on low mids. Chorus, I feel what's going on, take away. No, I don't think. Yeah, cut back on the pan layers. Sorry for question 2. Does the intro beat sound appropriate with the sub, or is it giving too much energy? A little too much energy. I hear what Mag and Diner are saying about like not having sub in the intro, but also you can compensate for that. Like if you listen to Vector, he like will start with just a fucking sustained sub. It's like the first thing you hear in some of his tracks. But he's got a ton of high end to make up for it that like comes in with the drop and like a really swanky drum beat.
The reason we say that is because it's an easy way to improve the energy at the drop of a hat.
Also,
True. Yeah,
also,
I mean, you're definitely gonna notice if there wasn't a sub before and there is now. But I think there are ways you can get away with it, but you really have to be compensating in other areas if you're gonna come in. Because on a big system, like the sub is so loud,
well, the
so
other big
you
thing
just
is
gotta
like
be mindful.
even in the Vector tracks, like yes, you're right. There's like intro sub, but what he's doing is he is dynamically removing the sub as he gets closer to the drop, like the line in which the drop is going to happen, and then at the drop he's still giving it back. My point is like there's never going to be a sub leading up to that moment at the same level as the drop sub, even in Vector's tracks. Like he literally will have it like maybe do like a bass drop, like where it literally is like lowering in pitch and then it goes away, right? And then he hits you with the sub, meaning like even if it's only for like a half a bar or a quarter of a bar or any amount of time, it's important in my opinion for it to not be there for that period of time, whether it's a long period of time or not. But you're not
Yeah,
wrong.
that's fair.
You're not wrong though. It is okay to have bass in your intros. It's just you have to be cognizant that you have to like convince the listener at the drop that it was not there somehow, or if it is there, there's a lot of other things happening that like make it even more crazy. But
Yeah.
my bad. Didn't want to like hijack, but I've noticed that he does that. He still has sub, but he gives you room where there isn't sub right before he hits you with all of the cool shit.
Yeah, and that I mean that even goes for like the end of some phrases. Like pull the sub out so that it hits harder. But is the sub loud enough for a little bit mid basses? Okay, so because you're going so low, and sometimes like you could transpose everything up, and it's gonna sound fine to the listener. Like the listener's not gonna know that you did that. But now that you've made this whole song in this key, it's probably gonna be hard to do that. If you can do it, then do it. But I have trouble with that. Most of the time I will kill a song before I like start changing the notes because then for some reason it just sounds weird to me now. But if you're gonna go that low, you gotta be like super mindful of low mids on your sub. Because like if you have a sub that's hitting C0, pretty much no system's gonna hit that except for the huge ones and like the really, really nice experimental bass systems. So you want to pump the second harmonic super hard so that you're like hitting the low C and the high C, and it's still not going to come through like super clean like a D sharp would, but you can get away with it. Thing is, you can't then hit a high note with that same sub with your second harmonic super loud because it's super resonant. So if you're gonna move that low and then come back up, I would just kind of pump the low mids pretty hard. Like honestly, I referenced like a Cohen Sound song once, and when they went down to C0, second harmonic was as loud as the sub. And then you could tell when they went back up to like E, it was a different sub. Just looking at it on the spectrum. But yeah, I don't know. I do like your shit, and you like low mids a lot, and I do too. And it's just like kind of a struggle with getting clarity and like getting something to sound like super thick and warm. It's just like a constant battle that I still kind of struggle with sometimes. But you start to get better and better at it, as I feel like you have been. But yeah, good track as always.
Alrighty then. Okay. Let's go in here. Let's see. The questions are in the thing. Yeah, first question. You already know the answer to that question. It's giving up way too much of the energy before the actual verse riff drops. Don't listen to real. You can't have full fat sub before the drop. He is 100% tripping in that regard. No, I'm kidding. If you take it away, you need that AB. There needs to be a contrast. So that's that. Does the chorus, although it's meant to have slightly hectic feel to this part, does it feel like there's too much going on, and is it taking away from the main idea? Perhaps it can cut back on those pan layers. I'm not sure what you mean by chorus because a chorus is not really an arrangement term used in electronic music, I guess. That being said, is the sub loud enough relative to mid basses, and is it coming through clean? If so, I think Magda addressed that pretty well. I do have to just echo something that Real said. Why are we hard panning mid basses? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, it just feels weird, and it's not going to translate on a system well. And yeah, I mean, like, ideally, like, you could just, like, your track, you should be able to just hit the mono button and have like almost no change to it with electronic music. Because for the most part, like, I know with my little sound system, everything comes out mono anyway. So, and a lot of like the bigger systems, like when you have where the fuck are they? Hold on a second. This is a QSE speaker. Okay, these are the daisy chains. All right. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I guess it doesn't say on here, but I can tell you without a shadow of the doubt that the mix out that goes out of this is not stereo. It sums it to mono, and then it pushes a mono signal to the next speaker. And if QSE is doing it that way, I'm willing to bet other companies are doing it that way too. So anyone who's using a daisy chain system like that, which is a lot of people, it's going to be mono anyway. So I guess that doesn't really matter then if it's hard pan, but you're going to lose like a lot of the energy of it. So yeah, that's that. Yeah, I feel like the guys probably address this a lot. If there was a lot going on with this track, dude. Like, if it ever loads for me, hold on a second.
I mean, I'll quickly piggyback off of what you were just saying. Like, my thought process when it comes to making sure your stuff is mono compatible is, what do you care about? Do you care about people listening to this on just headphones, or do you care about people listening to this on anything? And I think that if you care about people listening to this on anything, which in my opinion, if you're trying to really flex, that's what you should do, then you should make sure it's mono compatible. I mean, why not give yourself the opportunity to reach more people? That's my thought process with that. But yeah.
All right. Anyway, yeah, I mean, that's all I really had to say about that. And Real, if I listen to that track and the bass is at a lower level in the intro than it is in the main drop, then I have like 3 pounds of steak for you to come eat, buddy.
Dude, look at it. It's a fucking brick. It's a brick.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'll
Might
drop
as
it in the
well get
YouTube
on
chat.
with the last track. Last track's garbage anyway.
Oh, wait, let's see.
I
Oh, yeah, that's
I
right.
pre-listened to it.
That's right.
Oh yeah, refresh the page, by the way.
Oh, refresh it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. You didn't get rid of this.
No.
That's good.
I was about to.
All right. Last up, we got Baked Potato, aka Dino. What a guy! All right, I'm excited. Let's see what kind of craziness is about to go down. Never give up. Never Feefrender 3.
I know you want to go first.
Yeah. So, addressing the first question, is the 567 polymeter starting at breakdown okay? I don't know what that even means, so I'm gonna skip over that question.
Bro, I don't
I
even
feel
know
like
what that means. It's crazy.
I feel like the LFO on the sub bass isn't right with the mid bass. I completely agree. And then is the mid bass hitting, or do I need a more dedicated one? I'm not entirely sure. Also, the drums on this fucking sucked. They feel like they were definitely a work in progress for sure. Like there was like no atmospheric anything to
You're
them.
not
Like
supposed to
just felt like
cook.
everything was
You're not. Look, it
100%
says so.
dry.
Don't cook me.
And this track would have been way better with the sax solo. If you know, you know. And then yeah, go ahead, boys. Roast it.
All right. Do you want to go first, real?
Yeah, no, I thought the polymeter was cool. I honestly didn't even notice it, so that's should say enough.
So then it wasn't cool.
No, it was, because if you can do that without me noticing, like, oh, that was weird, then it was good. The rhythm felt good throughout. LFO on the sub bass isn't right with the mid bass. Yeah, the LFO was kind of funky. Oh no, I forgot, dude. The kick, the kick.
What's wrong with
It's
the kick?
so. I wanted to turn the song up. Like, I genuinely wanted to turn it up so I could hear it louder. And then I did, and I heard the transient, and I couldn't turn it up any louder because the transient was so gnarly. I just don't like those kicks though. You know that.
You like that? You like that zappy transient kick, don't you?
No, it felt like it had no it was just a zap and then no body on it. Which is like kind of standard for bass music not to have the body, but I like it. If you're gonna make it punch that hard, like there's gotta be an aftershock or something.
The aftershock is the
Um,
bass. It's the sub that comes in after. You know what that does on a system. You know exactly what that sounds like on a system. It's a it's a
I hate it
it's
on
a
monitors.
it's a punch. It's a punch in your gut, and then it's bass in your butt. That's exactly what it is. I will defend my kicks until the day I die.
Is the
Anyway.
mid bass hitting, or do I need a more dedicated? What do you mean the mid bass? Like the harmonics on the sub, or like the little the low
Not
MIDI
the same
boy.
shit. Sorry.
First, he's roasting you in chat.
I thought the same
The
thing.
polymer is when you don't notice silly dinosaur aftershock. For real though, I mean, like, if you're gonna have a kick that meaty, there's gotta be some it's like a really mean chihuahua. Like, it freaks out when you first see it, but it's not gonna fucking hurt you or anything. Like, if you're gonna make it punch that hard, like,
Do you want
let
it?
it,
Do
like,
you want it? Do you want it to hurt you? Because I can make it a tinnitus activator. Like we can.
I mean, I just want it. Never mind.
Why
We're
can't it
moving
be in
on.
between? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. All right. I'll hear you out, real. I'll try playing with a boofier kick.
Yeah, or just less transient, but never mind.
And then
Never mind.
so for the mid bass, there is no mid bass in the first half of the first drop, but and then in the second bass, it's the spectrally squelchy stuff that's happening is what I'm calling my mid bass.
Wait, play it really quick, Magda. Nah, that's cool. I wouldn't. What do you mean more dedicated? Like more present?
Like an actual something that doesn't like fade in and out and like have like delays on it and that kind of stuff, but like an actual like played out mid bass. But I don't.
I like how this is sitting in the mix. I don't think it because yeah, it was a nice layer to add in. Again, I didn't even notice it, so that's how I like layers to be. I don't really hear the individual layers. It just like works really well as a unit, and then if you listen really close, you can pick it all apart. But yeah, I don't know. This was clean. All your shit's super clean. I haven't heard your music in a while, so this is nice. Drums are whip. Yeah, the kick was a whip. Everything else is fine.
I was thinking more like the hi-hats are definitely place held, and then the snare is definitely place held. Like that's a 100% dry snare the whole way through. There's no ambience or atmosphere to it. There's no pitching to it. Like it's just 100% whip status. So yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Magnet. Roast it.
Word.
They're gonna be
Yeah.
able to turn on.
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't answer any of your questions to my notes. I'm just kidding. So yeah, I didn't really notice I don't even know what this means. Honestly, I don't know.
Okay, so a polymeter, for those of you who are not in the know, all
That's
right,
me.
if a polyrhythm is a number of notes played in equal amount of time over a bar, okay, then a polymeter is when you have a number of notes that have an equal amount of time regardless of the length of the bar. So 4 out of 4 is not a polymeter, but 3 out of 4. So it'd be first hit, second hit, third hit, repeat. And then on the next bar, it'd be second hit, third hit, first hit, second hit, third hit. So
I see what you're saying.
it's just a pattern that just plays after itself regardless of where it is, like in the bar of the music. And so in this track, in the breakdown, I start stacking a 5, 6, and 7 polymeter to where it's running down the scale. The 7 is all 7 notes of the scale, and then the 6 is the 6 notes, not the 7th, and then the 5 is the 5 notes, not the 6th and the 7th. So, and it just repeats, and it creates this like really weird cascading effect that can be like super strange. And that's what the wavetable bells are. So yes, that is a polymeter.
Word. Well, I think when it starts is fine. I think that wasn't my problem with it. I actually wrote down what my issues with it were. So like the big issue that I had with it initially, I'm gonna show you here. Hear that clicking sound?
Go back. That artifact
Yeah. I'm not a
that
fan
is
of
not
that.
present. That's not present in Ableton.
I'm just saying I don't like that personally.
Digital
Clicks.
I've not.
I'm like a wizard when it
I've
comes to
not-
noticing those. Apparently, I'm obsessed.
I've not
I'm
heard
obsessed
that.
with removing
Hold on,
them.
let me play that section in Ableton real quick.
Yeah, I hate those. The like click 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 click. You know what I'm saying?
So
Yeah, you can hear it.
that is a delay that is being put on the percussion layer in the bottom end, and I need to just cut that out from this end
Yeah.
when it goes into the breakdown. That just
Digital distortion, you
like-
already know. I avoid that like the plague just because it's not intentional. I don't think. And if it is intentional, I'm not a big fan of it.
that's not supposed to be there, and it's not as present in Ableton.
Oh, it wasn't there in the DAW. It just got added in after.
Magically showed up. No, I know exactly what it is.
The other thing that I thought about it was I think it could hit different notes. I think camping the same doon 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 the whole time, I don't know, it starts to get a little bit, it's like halfway through this drop section I'm like, dang, it's really going to stay on these 4 notes. And I was
7 notes, but yeah.
okay, well, you know what I mean? Like it feels like
So if you read the description down towards the bottom, there is a major element missing.
True, but I still think that even then, what key is this in? What key is this in?
That's a great question. B flat minor, but starting on F. So I wouldn't be able to tell you some fucking mode.
Okay,
I don't know.
let me see if B flat minor is a vibe.
It is. It's F and C and all the black keys.
It's a good key. It's true.
So like, why not do an upward one? You know, like
Bro's about to start playing his flute on this shit, and he's got us muted. That's crazy.
I feel like having some just something that changes that just a little bit. Like maybe just once you're like just when you decide to, right? Because I know it's not specific to the grid, but just to have periodic like change in that to like let me feel a little bit more dynamicness happening.
Let me just try reversing this altogether real quick. Because we can do that in Ableton.
Word. I also think.
How do you flip it? Flip? No. No. How do you just easily flip the notes? What the hell? Ah. Invert. There we go. Yeah, that doesn't work. But I'm hearing what you're saying. I can change
mess
up
with
the
a couple
pattern
of notes.
sending.
Yeah.
Don't if you're doing multiple notes, don't use the invert button. Use the reverse button. Invert will like knock it out of key sometimes. It'll change some of the note. It'll keep the top note and the bottom note, but it'll change the ones in the middle.
I still think you should just be intentional with it. Like get in there and like decide which notes you want exactly. Don't just like click a button and like hope that solves it. I think you could be intentional with it anyway. But let me continue with my thoughts. So I think you understand what I'm trying to say there.
Yes. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
I think the other big thing that stood out to me in a negative way, at least, and you didn't ask about this, but I do think, I guess you kind of did. I feel the LFO base in the sub isn't right. So you did kind of, you said something about it, but it's not really in the way that you're probably intending. I don't get the LFO-ness of this intro bass. Where was it? That. I personally don't think that it works nicely. Like I didn't enjoy the woo 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 woo. I like the sustained subs better. Like I think if you just kept that all, and you're using sustained subs here anyway. Like I don't think you're doing that at all in the drop.
Oh no, it does it throughout the whole track. It just does it differently.
I don't think so.
Just wait for it. It'll do it in the second half of the second drop. Oh wait, hold on. Let me check.
I'm telling you, it doesn't. I was paying attention to that. I was like, does he do it all on the drop? And the short answer is
yes.
no.
It does in the last quarter of the second drop, but
right
just
here.
barely. Yeah.
I feel it doesn't. It works better as like I think it worked there at the end of the drop. I think it worked as like a transition-y vibe, but I don't think it made as much sense to me as like a main driving element in the intro, especially with how like aggressive it is. But
like the reason I ask about it because I feel like it's not working right. And if you look at the chat I just sent, so downward in there is where LFO is present, right? And so if I do the same parameter, you think on the first drop is in the second drop, like that might make it a little bit better. Because I feel like it's too aggressive of a change to go from like that nice, clean, pure sustain to like the pulsing LFO. But like I can't tell people to put pulses in their sub bass and not have a pulsy sub bass myself. You know, like.
No, I get you. I mean,
I could also change it to and it was Weeva and Percy last night were telling me that I should change it from a filter to an auto pan, and that might be better, so that it's like not as like it just sounds different filtering it versus doing volume fuckery.
I agree. No, I agree. I'm just saying I felt like the sustain bass felt a little bit more.
It just feels better, right?
Better. And on top of that, I think if you're planning on adding a sax solo, I think it will do a better job at like giving that a thing to sit on, because it won't like distract the listener as much. Like I feel like it distracted me from the the ambiance of like all of this like calm energy, and then I'm hearing like the woo woo woo, and I'm like, it's kind of like pulling me away from that, which I didn't like. I liked just being lost in this like calm kind of like astral plane. But anyway, back to my other thoughts. So, and this is again, I'm going to answer all your questions, but I just wanted to get the things I wrote down out of the way. Oh, so I think that the mid bass was really quiet in comparison to everything else during the drop. Like, I want the woo, 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 you know, I want that to be like more forward in the mix. And I think you could achieve that by like clipping it and then just pushing the gain up into the clipper. And that's just my thought. And maybe EQing out a little bit of low mids just to be safe. But yeah, I think that could be louder because I really like that sound. But it just feels like so backward in the mix, or back in the mix compared to, for example, the descending polyrhythm or polymeter thing. Like, I think that the polymeter is like way too forward in comparison to that mid bass. So I would say either turn down the polymeter sound or more preferably bring up the mid bass sound. And then what else do I have here? Okay, the last thing that I thought would be great, especially if you have a sax, is kind of following. So you hear that, you have it done, you have it. So what I heard there was let's see, what is it? Is it not?
You want me to tell you what it's doing?
Oh, it's not. Okay, so this would not be in the scale. Hang on. Yeah,
I mean, we don't have to stay. We
Tell
don't
me
have
what-
to stay in the scale.
Okay, good.
It's hitting A sharp 1 and then G sharp 2, A sharp 2.
So A sharp 1, then what?
Then G sharp 2 and then A sharp 2. It's doing an octave jump.
Is that a G that I think it should hit? Hang on, let me see here. I think if it hits whatever the note, dun 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 dun, like that's what I want it to hit, is like just and then fade out. Like, I don't think you need any of this extra key stuff at the end. I think if you have it just hit like a dun dun, you know, just have it hit like a dun, and then
So have it invert it from an upward motion to a converging motion. So go
literally just to have it end on a spicy note. It's almost like, because you kind of hint at it in the background elements, which I think is, what is this? Whatever that like chord that you have, whatever that spicy chord that you have going on every once in a while that's in the atmosphere, you're kind of like connecting it to that by playing that one note. And I think if you have it just like fade out into like a hybrid Atmos reverb or whatever reverb you want to use, I think that would be really spicy. And then you could still have some saxophone energy happening while this is all going on. But yeah, I think that the way that it carries on into the next section is unnecessary, personally. I don't think it needed to be there for that outro. And I think if you just have it go like that one note down in that scale, like the do 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 do, like it's like the do do. You know, like that's kind of the note that I'm feeling, and then it just kind of like goes into a washed out kind of vibe. But that was just like what I heard in my brain that I think would really make that area really slap in a very melodically pleasant way. And yeah, no, I mean, like, other than that, let me look at your questions again. Yeah, the drums are whip. I mean, I really didn't like the hi-hat pattern personally, but maybe that's just me being
like I said, the hi-hat pattern is a placeholder for sure.
is that actually something you put in here too? Well, if not, yeah, I think that's like the first thing I would work on. I think the kick actually kind of works. I'm gonna go ahead and say the kick actually
Oh, I
does.
I
work.
know the kick works.
Um,
Reel is just the worst.
the snare though.
And it leaves a lot to be
No,
desired.
I think the snare isn't horrible. It's just not in a space. I think it could be reverbed out a little bit.
It's very dry. There's no wet. Like I said, there's no anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like the big thing is the snare not being like as atmospheric as everything else feels a little bit jarring. Is the mid bass hitting or do I need a more dedicated one? I still think that it sounds great the way that it is. It's just not loud enough. I think that clipping it or limiting it and then boosting it into that would be, I think, a good move. You could also try using some kind of distortion that's maybe a little bit more stereo, like a dual amp or even thermal if you have that. I don't know if you have that or not, but you could try that as well. You could also use what the heck is it called? I'm drawing a blank. What's the other? There's another stereo-ish one. Oh, Roar. There we go. If you are on 12, I don't know if you're on 12, but my point is like some kind of stereo distortion would really help that, I think, a lot. And then, yeah, you already know my opinion on the LFO on the sub bass. I think, I don't know, it worked here.
So I just tried going -3 into a limiter and then like +9, I think it is. Yeah, +9 into -3 on a limiter for the mid bass, and you're right, that helped quite a bit.
Yeah, because like as long as you're controlling the more like peaky elements of it, but like really just like it's kind of like OTTing a little bit. Fuck, you might even be able to throw some OTT on there too and get away with some more like pulling out some frequencies. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have.
My problem with doing something like that is I have my different mid basses going to different sends, and so I'd have to probably. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I could just create a little effect rack and
you can route
duplicate it
everything to
onto
one
multiple
track.
channels.
You could route everything to one track. Like even if it's going to sends, you just route the outputs of those sends to that track, and just make sure you have the input turned on and the.
How the fuck do you do that?
I've seen who the fuck was it that I saw do that? Who's the guy that makes like Supertask? Supertask does that. So he routes like all of his shit to like one track, even his sends. So like what you could do is you could either make another send, which is probably the easiest way to do it, and then route all your sends and all of your tracks that are going to the sends to that one send, and then process that. Or you could route all of your sends and all of the tracks that you're processing to a track. But I think that's actually easier.
I thought one of the limitations of Ableton is that you can't send a send.
You can re-enable that. So there is a way. In fact, here I'll show you. Let me just
Please do.
Let me just make this like over here. I don't want to report a crash. Oh well, I guess I do want to for now. All right. Just because that way you can see it on stream. Hopefully, let me just make sure.
Yeah.
Hang on. We're gonna get this to work. Okay. You can see my sends. All right. So normally the sends are disabled and you can't route them to one another. But there is a way
enable send.
Yeah, you can enable the send. But there's. Is that how?
Yeah, no, that's it.
Yeah,
just
okay.
Enable send. Yeah.
Yeah, so that way you can basically have like a third send. So I could insert return track and call this like, I don't know, like
third
master
send.
fader, like or something, right? And then I can make sure that I've enabled this here, and that means this is going to go to this send. So
okay. Yeah, I didn't know you could do that.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's what I would recommend. I've seen Supertask do that. That's the only reason why I know about it. But yeah, that's what I would say do. And OTT is just such a great plugin for that. Bringing out little bits and pieces you didn't even know you needed.
I think we've shit on this shitty track quite a bit, guys.
We did. It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
It's awful.
It's actually quite good. I do love the way that you acquire such peaceful and trance-inducing vibes. So
right. I just want to make like one more point about this is if you guys notice, there's an intro, a breakdown, and an outro, right? And the intro is half the length of the drop, and the breakdown is half the length of the next drop, and the outro is half the length of the preceding drop. So, just saying, that's the old 16-32, 16-32, 16 trick. And
Basically, you're flexing.
that's the flow. If you guys ever need arrangement advice, just remember 16-32, 16-32, 16. But anyway, thank you guys for fiefing us tonight. Thank you to everyone who submitted tracks. If you ever want to get some one-on-one coaching for music lessons, then you can come through on a Thursday and Sunday at 9 o'clock Eastern for the Flock Flip. And that is the best way to learn how to make music, in my opinion. Let's all give a hand of applause and thank you for Real for showing up, taking time out of his busy schedule to grace us with his presence. And everyone, just send him a message on Discord saying, Real, get in the kitchen and start cooking. We miss your music, Real. And
Bro, ask Percy. I'm cooking.
you're never cooking.
He's
All right.
cooking crack in his
Yeah,
basement.
we want
to hear you
sample
cooking
your-
music, all right?
Yeah. And then let's all give Mr. Magduit a big old thank you. Thank you, Mr. Magduit. Hosting the stream for the what is it, like 8th consecutive week, something like that?
I think so. We're doing good.
Yeah.
We're going to keep going.
Yep. Haven't missed one yet.
Yep. I could be playing a new video game that just dropped today, but I'm not. All right. Because
Yeah, also
priorities.
Real. Percy is saying, ask Percy, bro hasn't sent me music in months, is what Percy's saying.
Oh my gosh,
No,
Real's
dude, he's
lying.
trolling. He's trolling.
So and I personally haven't heard anything from you since the last time you dropped something here in Fief. So yeah. That being said, thank you guys for doing the thing. Thank you to everyone who stuck around to the end, all 6 of you, 7 of you, however many it is. And then I think next week we might have a new guest on. I'm not sure yet though, but I think we might have a new guest next week.
Goals.
We'll just have to see. We'll just have to see if they're ready. All right. But anyway, thank you, gentlemen. Good night. God bless America.
Wait,
And we
wait.
have all been.
Can we also thank Dino for being such an excellent
no.
co-host, flexing some of the best feedback on the block, and
No,
yeah.
they don't pay me for this, but if they did, I would be a lot nicer.
yeah, and I
would be-
want to thank my girlfriend for being here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was funny.
Yeah. You could always guess Carmen, just go sit behind Brad.
True, that's true.
I feel like there's a chair sitting directly behind him.
There is. That is a chair.
Yeah. I feel like you need a black leather couch. I feel like hold on. I think you know exactly which couch you need too.
yeah, I think so. But in all serious note, though, thank you so much for everyone who came by. We'll see you soon. Like Dino said, Thursdays, Sundays. Which couch? Hang on. Let me see here.
I would show it on stream.
Don't? Okay.
I mean, you can.
This couch. But yeah, no. But thank you all for your cool songs. I think that this week was pretty spicy. We had some nice songs. We had some good ones.
Yeah.
Except the last one. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the last one. Okay, so the reason that I made this salad track again is because I'm getting label interest on a particular track, and I don't want to send in just a lone track. I want to have like an EP of at least 4 songs, so there will be like 15 minutes of large father music.
Well, that was like
It could
really
be.
peaceful. It definitely got me into like a peaceful mindset, which was nice.
Well, I mean, that's the idea. I'm like a 5 a.m. kind of guy. So, and at 5 a.m., like after like the peak music has played at like 3, and the guy who's like way off topic at 4 o'clock, like doesn't know when to quit kind of thing. Like by 5 o'clock, like you want some like peaceful melodic, like I can sleep to this kind of stuff. I feel like that's a niche I'm trying to hit.
Well, I think it works great. This would be nice, like relaxing music after you've just been dancing for 8 hours, and you're like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm ready to like unwind, chill
For the
out.
people who are still psychonautically inclined, they can enjoy it. But then, and it's like groovy enough to where like you can still like move a little if you want to dance to it. But then at the same time, like it's not disruptive to sleep or something. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks guys. Thanks boys.
Thank you as well. We'll see you all next Friday. Bye bye. Bye bye.